What is happening, everyone? Welcome to the channel. My name is Chris Ferguson. My co-host to the left is Tristan Lauder. And tonight we are joined by Mr. Dan Woolard, who is the co-director of XFC Australia, the longest running MMA promotion in the country. Dan, first of all, mate, how are you? How you feeling, brother?
I'm all right. Seven o'clock on a Friday afternoon. Things are going all right.
How many beers deep are you for the interview, mate?
Half a can.
Oh, that's cool.
Only?
Yeah, I know. I started late. Should have thought about this more, right?
So we'll kick off with XFC 58. So that's on September 3rd. Headlined by CKB's Aaron Tao and Queensland's own Paul Loga for the bantamweight strap, mate. Give us a bit of a rundown on that main event there.
Well, we've been going for that one for a while, actually. Looking to get Aaron back over after he transitioned to Combat Academy with Dan Hooker. So, finding someone that wanted to fight him, it's not been an easy task.
What about so Paul Loga stepped up? He's coming back off injury, yeah?
Yeah, he's not fought for a little while now, so we're really excited to get Paul back and get him back on an event up in Brisbane. Get him home.
Yeah, for sure. Bring that bantamweight strap home, mate.
Brisbane local.
Well, Aaron is as Brisbane, not so much recently, but
yeah.
So, there's a bit of a relationship between the two of them too that they're going to put aside for 25 minutes. So I've been told.
So they're mates, are they? They're friends.
They are. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Who else is on the card that we should be keeping an eye out for?
So we've got one that I'm really excited about and really happy that we got across the line is Birch's pro debut. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the featherweight debut of our current featherweight amateur champion. So Connor's coming in. He's been itching to use his elbows. He's been asking me for a while. So we're giving him the chance. And that's one I'm really excited for. We've got another pro welterweight bout. Mikey down from Central Coast MMA coming up back home. He's a Gold Coast boy too, so he's coming back up.
Pearson's gym, yeah?
Yeah, yep. And he's against Stu Dare from Tassie.
Yep.
Both these guys are 15, 16 fights deep, right? They're, mate, don't look sideways at them because they'll clock you. So they don't want a cuddling match, so I've been told. So there should be
wonderful
some big hands getting thrown there.
Looking forward
Dan,
to that
just like
one.
with amateur fighters these days, like I guess on average, how many fights are they having at amateur before they move to pro?
It really depends, Tristan. Hey, like a lot of the gyms, their guys are having 10 to a dozen potentially. Mm-hmm. Other gyms are like, you win 5, time to change. Others are just in a division where there's not a lot of opportunity at that level, or guys that are coming in, young guys that have been jiu-jitsu guys for forever, and you're like, okay, I'll have my MMA amateur debut. I've got a brown belt. Like other dudes are coming in off 6-7 months maybe of training from nothing, right? Like that's ludicrous.
Damn, 6 months training from nothing. Getting straight,
man,
man, getting straight in the cage like
that. Mate, some of these dudes have stones on them, eh? Like I wouldn't want to go them. They're kids, like just out of high school, 19, 20, just animals. Like
angry at the world at that age, eh?
Oh
yeah,
no, mate, I was worried about playing sport and chasing girls. Like these dudes are
while we're on the amateurs, how much of a scene for amateur heavyweights, light heavyweights, sort of even middleweights. Middleweights. Like, is there much of an amateur scene for them?
They're probably the three hardest divisions that I come across trying to fill spots. Again, there's just, like, they're not all. Yeah, there's not that many big dudes around that are. There's a few transitioning or do some like cross sport stuff in footy off season and random stuff like that. But yeah, the big boppers. There's not that many. Probably down at middleweight, there's a few more. But the light heavies and the heavyweights is that's a tough division across the country.
Yeah.
So Dan, how does that kind of process go for you? So, for example, if somebody in light heavyweight or middleweight reaches out to you and says, "Hey, I want to fight on XFC," like, how do you go about finding an opponent for them? Is there some kind of like scouting thing you do, or like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the whole process, like, in a nutshell. We have relationship with gyms pre-existing that I can, that I give them the dates ahead of time. Here's my 2022 2023 calendar. They have a look at their team, and within their coaching structure, they will assess who potentially be ready at which particular time. So we get that kind of feedback from some gyms, and then off the back of that is then other gyms providing the same information, and then if something aligns as simply as that, then happy days. Otherwise, it's on the phone calls, on the messages, ringing around far and wide.
Silly question, but do you ever go down to the local pub and just ask an old geezer if they want to fight or anything?
Mate, that could make it a little bit easier, but no. I'd probably get too distracted. And if we had this conversation while I was down there, I'd probably say it'd be a few more schooners deep.
Yeah. I'd love to get a bit of information on XFC sort of before you came along. Can you give the audience a bit of a rundown on how XFC kicked off and some of the luminaries that have come from the promotion over the years?
Yeah, so 2016 is when part of my reign come in. We were fortunate enough to get the platform from its original owner, creator, Justin Lawrence. We between Matt, myself, and Matt Walton, the former frontman of XFC, we, as you do, two mates having dinner, a few drinks were flowing. We got wind of Justin was potentially looking to step away from being a promoter and being XFC, and we looked at each other and was like, we can do this. Yeah. Why not? Give it a crack. What's the worst that can happen? And so from there, we sort of, like I said, we had an amazing platform to start with. So we've just, tried to continue that and bring it sort of, not that like Justin had it in a great spot, but social media and all that style of marketing and exposure and stuff like that. Obviously, some younger eyes at it, and that enthusiasm and passion for us for something new and something that we loved watching. We grabbed it with both hands, and I think we've evolved it from where it was.
What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in the Australian MMA scene since jumping on board back in 2016?
In the scene, the quality of athletes at the age of some of these athletes, like we alluded to earlier, like some of these dudes are, kids are just out of school. They don't even have hair on the chin, but get in there and just balls and just throw hands. Like, it's crazy. And the skill sets, like, they've been training since they were even, like early primary school, and the families that get them into, self-defense and all that kind of stuff. And they take it and run with it. And that would probably be, like, from what I've seen, the age of some of these athletes and the skill set they have, that's been from, probably you'd look at maybe a mid to late 20s guy around that. Like, it's not common, but it's not uncommon for that age, mid 20s person to be matched evenly and fairly with a kid 17, 18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
Like,
are those kids, Dan? Are they training strictly MMA? You mean, or they're doing?
Well, again, it depends. So there's some, like, exclusive MMA gyms where they really hone down on that, like, one, like, multiple disciplines about that one sport. Whereas there are some other gyms that they throw their guys into the different in the individual discipline, sports. Like, they might be a kid who's, only had one MMA fight, but they've had 10 to a dozen Thai fights, or, they're blue, purple belts, BJJ. Like, it really depends on the gym and the head coach of those particular gyms, how they approach their teams.
Do you think, from your perspective, Dan, like, is there a tougher kind of sport to transition from into MMA? So, like, do you think people that start with BJJ or wrestling do better than, Muay Thai fighters or anything like that?
No, mate, my hat's off to any of them, really. Like, you're a dangerous person as a brown belt or a purple belt in BJJ. You're, as equally dangerous in a different aspect if you've had a dozen Thai fights. Like, yeah, I can wrestle you, or I can submit you quick. That's fine. I can kick your head off. So,
yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say that one. I wouldn't say that one outweighs the other. It certainly adds some challenges for me as a matchmaker to try and justify some matches with some of those discrepancies or those differences in the athletes. But I mean, you're a brown belt until you get punched in the head. Then you're a purple. You get punched in the head again. Then you're blue. Then it's even. Then you're even peggings again. But get me on the ground. Get me on the ground. I'm going to rip your arm off. Like, that's where we're at. So some coaches will say, "Oh, he's had a dozen Thai fights. My guy's not a striker; he's a wrestler." So I'm like, "So wrestle him then. Like, don't get hit.
Yeah,
wrestle him
down. Don't spend a name with the guy."
Well, that's it, right? So, styles make fights, and there's stylistically, if they're the same, that's then probably more a technical, thing. But if it's one versus the other, then all right, which one's the dominant?
I'd like to get. I mean, we've just been talking about it a little bit. Where Australia's at right now in terms of talent. I mean, we're from my perspective, we're in a bit of a golden age by the looks of it, with the amount of talent coming through the UFC. Not even just the UFC, the PFL, and all that as well. Do you think, as being on the ground level in Australia, is that something we can expect to continue? Are we going to continue producing, sort of elite level athletes out of the country?
Oh, mate, I absolutely think that. I mean, and you've only got to look at, your Volkanovskis, your Izzy's over there at CKB, and between us and New Zealand, like, that's basically the same in my opinion. We're all sort of together there. How can an athlete coming up training with those guys not benefit from that and accelerate themselves to continue to be better? And like, it has to be. I mean, and even the guys that aren't in there, specific with athletes that are, where we're at currently. But I mean, you've got head coaches that have been UFC, 1FC, PFL, and who are that little bit older, but Jesus, still weapons. And
have the knowledge to go with it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Like,
what do you?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like I said, and it's all the way back down to like that those kids are soaking that shit in so much that I would not be surprised to see, more of that top of the food chain athlete being an Australian or a Kiwi, something like that.
Do you think, like, with this kind of explosion in Australian MMA and stuff, Dan, do you think that the media is kind of lacking a little bit in terms of still catching up in terms of support for our Aussie athletes?
Yeah, I would agree that it doesn't fully get the exposure of, say, obviously UFCs or 1FCs nationally. In the industry, within the industry, it is. But yeah, I mean, being all over the news or ESPN or all that kind of stuff, there's massive room for growth there in the country.
But yeah, what could be done more? What could be done in Australia to get more eyes on regional MMA such as XFC?
But, well, I think it's probably a two-bit thing, right? I'd say, my ability to, and it's kind of hard, and even, the boxing's on Fox and stuff like that. There's it's not getting that sort of significant investment from, stuff like that. How that comes about, I think, between the promotions, the level is increasing in the quality of the show, of the athletes. So really, I think we're on the doorstep. It's only a matter of time before they go, hang on, this is a thing, and we're in the footsteps and the the shadow of the UFC, like, that can be created, I think.
Yeah, I was going to ask as well. Why do you think we haven't seen a regular broadcast deal between an Australian TV station and a regional promotion? Because I mean, surely now the sport's at a peak, and there's enough channels on regular television to sort of accommodate a once a month or once every 2 months sort of show. First of all, is that something you've explored?
And it's something that we're in the process of exploring. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because I don't know. It just seemed like a little bit of a, maybe not a no-brainer, but it just seemed like, that's a market there that people should be starting to jump on and support in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the conversations with the the broadcasting stations and stuff, it is a hard one because depends on who you get, who you're talking to. If they're against the sport or they don't like it or they've had a bad experience or something like that, anything gets canned without even getting off the ground. I think all it would take would be an opportunity and, a small foot in the door. And once that happens, they'll see, right, it's legitimate, it's controlled. It doesn't have that stigma of, two dudes getting in a cage until someone can't get out.
Human cockfighting, like they used to call it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That stigma's still around, though, isn't it? Like,
absolutely.
You still hear that from people that don't watch the sport or whatever. People that ask me about it, they feel like it's just some brutal death match. And
Yeah, you do that no rules thing, don't you? Is that what you're? I'm like, no, we have rules.
Yeah, they think it's all no rules. Like, you're just punching dudes in the balls the whole time or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Dan, I have a question for you too. Like, in terms of that, so kind of getting on a big broadcasting network or whatever. I guess because kind of I guess we're moving a little bit away from traditional forms of media like that. Would it be more of a benefit to you to say get on like Fightpass or some kind of streaming platform like that, or what do you think there?
Yeah, absolutely. That again is another great opportunity for the sport, and yeah, that's another avenue that's being explored at the moment.
Cool.
Even like just on YouTube or on the socials, like that's massive. So that there's opportunities, across the board, across the platforms, that are potentially being not underutilized, but certainly can be utilized to a fuller capacity.
Yeah, for sure. I wonder how that YouTube streaming thing goes because I know ONE FC does that pretty regularly, right? They have like
Yeah,
live event streaming. Yeah, so
yeah. So all those processes and sort of like navigating around how to answer that, their process with it is like you need degrees in this and degrees in that and degrees in this to
right.
understand some of the the opportunities and some of the requirements that they want, and then whether you can meet them is another thing, that all that kind of stuff. But the opportunities are there, and the opportunities are being explored, so it's really exciting. And yeah, I think there's massive potential to really go mainstream and get MMA mainstream more than like what it probably would be perceived as mainstream by the community and the MMA community. But big picture, I mean, I've talked to my parents over the dinner table every now and again, and like I said, that's they don't see it, and that's the sort of general public.
Yeah. While we are on Fight Pass, Luke Thomas mentioned something recently. He's a US MMA reporter. He was talking how the industry is starting to sort of consolidate around Fight Pass as a distribution platform. I mean, the pros are obviously you get an influx of viewers and cash, but from your position as a promoter, what are some of the cons that would come along with signing a deal with someone like Fight Pass?
There's, I mean, and it's quite hard to respond because it's probably where you want to be within the sport. Anything under that banner, you're like, the perception is you're there, right? I guess something that would come with something along the lines of that would be a lack of control of post distribution and the actual, like content that you've created with the show or with past shows. So that would probably be a con. I believe that the pros probably outweigh that substantially. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's kind of like a really smart system they've got with Fight Pass and kind of having these other regional promotions on there because, in a way, like it kind of, I guess, monopolized the market a lot. So the fact that UFC is always going to be the top dog,
absolutely,
even, you know what I mean? So that you're always going to be associated with UFC. I guess if you get on Fight Pass and stuff like that, like, how do you distinguish yourself away from them?
yeah. Well, I guess the thing that is, and I guess I look at that, and the UFC has created this massive machine that they are. I mean, you look at our country versus theirs, right? And across, not just our sport, but everything, just normal life. Them versus us, they're how many times bigger? Like, how can and not specifically, we couldn't create something as good, but I guess the pool of what they can call on, just sheer geographically, how can they have not created something so massive? But I certainly don't think the quality of what we could do is not available. I mean, like I said, you got your Volkanovskis, you got your Adesanyas, Kai France coming up. Like absolutely, handful of straps potentially coming down here to the little guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, bring it home, baby.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about Brian Ebersol a little bit. He's your matchmaker there, or one of the matchmakers there at XFC. Is that right? No.
No.
Okay.
No,
We're not.
Brian was. So I'm fortunate
Okay.
enough to have a relationship with Brian. Brian was
Yeah.
our matchmaker for a period of time there.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll skip that line of questioning then.
That's okay.
We wanted to ask him about his chest shaving abilities.
Yeah. Well, he's had a few copycats that have strutted that on an XFC cage once or twice. So
that's awesome.
He's a good man.
With the Oz scene being a bit of a free market in terms of where athletes can go for moving around different promotions, how does that affect when you have XFC title holders that are appearing on other promotions, and like how much does that affect planning cards and matchmaking in advance? Muhammad Alavi's a recent example fighting on Eternal.
Yep. It certainly throws a spanner in the works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, relationships with different promoters and different coaches, it kind of can potentially dictate where athlete goes and at what time. Again, that's part of my job as the owner and as the matchmaker now, to make sure that my relationship with the gyms and with the athletes is strong enough that and the weight and the value of our belt, they would then hopefully choose to remain loyal to that particular brand and that particular position.
Yeah.
So I know like some of the other kind of promotions have been using kind of exclusive contracts and stuff like that. Is that something you'd ever consider at XFC, or is that something you thought about?
It's something that we've thought about. I guess it's kind of hard. So I know I've had a lot of conversations with gyms and athletes that have signed onto exclusive contracts elsewhere. And I mean, from what the information I've received and the conversations I've had, there's probably more that don't want to do that because they don't want to limit their opportunities elsewhere. I guess if a promotion was able to create that volume that everyone was exclusive, then it would work. But while it's sort of dribs and drabs here and there, I believe it to be a little bit detrimental, and I guess detrimental as a promoter and with another brand, but it's also potentially detrimental to the athlete. If they've signed on for a multi-fight contract, but they can't be matched, then what? They're iced for a while. And talking to the athletes, these dudes want to fight. If they can't fight elsewhere, but another promotion has as an athlete that's sort of loyal to them, and it can't be offered out. So that fight goes missing because one can't do it. And then, like I said, they want to fight 3-4 times a year. There's potential for that. If that, promotion can't, meet that minimum fight exclusive requirement, like I said, then they're iced and they sit around and they get disgruntled.
And that's also like someone else's, I guess, future fight that's taken away from them as well, right? It kind of affects all promotions in the scene as well, not just one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that I've, have a struggle with from time to time. I'm working around athletes that I know that I can approach and can't approach. So, like I said, it's in theory. In theory, I think it works. Not as sort of like spotty or you know as what it probably currently is.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. If you had free reign over every regional fighter in the country, every Australian fighter, what is the number one match that you would be making right now?
I give you one. I could rattle off handfuls and handfuls. There's
Let's go.
fights
Let's do it.
There's fights to be made. I mean, there's athletes in Perth that are tearing everyone apart. You know, there's armies of good dudes fighting out of Melbourne. You got some like freaks coming out of Sydney. Like I said, you got the New Zealand athletes that are training with the best. Yeah, we could be here for another couple of hours. And I could this division we need blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
There's like I'm lucky being in my position and not specifically coming from the sport. I've come in as a fan, so I've had a fight after we took over the ownership of XFC to experience what we were having. What these guys were doing for us. So I was like, I haven't done it, so I have a go. So I'm lucky. I get to make fights. I get to make fights that make sense and ones I want to see.
Yeah.
So I mean, one I want to see, Loga Town.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't wait either. We can't wait either. Dan,
you're right, Chris. You go. No, you go.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I was just going to talk about that. You had an MMA fight. So was that the Winter Warrior you did?
Yeah, so I've done the Winter Warrior program. I did that back in 2017. So we took over May 16, and then I signed up to the Winter Warrior. It was the Series 1 up in Brisbane. So
can you tell us a little bit about that, man? How was that experience for you, and how's the fight?
Experience was amazing. It was out of Gamebred, up at Eagle Farm. The drive sucked because I live in Ipswich, so that was
that's rough.
Not ideal.
That's rough.
Every morning for 6 months. I was lucky that my wife let me. She let me do it, and stayed home with the kids while I went and trained twice a day for 6 months.
Wow.
I felt amazing. Just at that time, like, and it's exactly like what people say about your mental health and physical health being so intertwined. There wasn't a problem you could have put in front of me that I couldn't have dealt with at that time. Just I was eating better, I was training hard, like I was a good husband, a good father. Everything sort of like was just a really good period of time. I probably hit my straps a little bit too late, and not having done it before, I really knuckled down in that process and up to the fight. I pretty quickly rolled back into 9 to 5 work life, dad life, husband life after that. So I haven't continued after that. Certainly haven't lost the passion for the sport and watching it. The whole experience, I felt amazing. I looked great. Like I felt great in myself. It was a really good process.
Good on you for that, mate. That's fantastic to hear. You can't say too many promoters would be, chomping at the bit to get in there and do the same thing.
Yeah, I think they said it on the night as they announced it. And that was my whole premise of doing it. Obviously, like I said, I was fortunate enough to take over the business with Matt. Matt's a purple belt, BJJ. He's had a fight as well. He was a bit more in that world, whereas I was. I spent my life playing football and basketball.
All right.
I won I won my first fight before that by 400 meters. So that's how I roll.
All right, we'll wrap up a little bit, but before we go, how many more cards this year are we expecting to see from XFC after the September card?
So I'm happy to be able to let you guys know that we are adding a show in between September and November, which was our scheduled date. So we're looking at October 15 and November 23 after the fireworks that are about to go down on September 3.
Wonderful, love to hear
bloody
that.
way.
Yeah,
any matches you can give us a scoop on? Anything you can
so,
leak?
yeah, I'll give you a little one. We'll the headliner that I'm looking for November will be Slam and Sam Dobb to defend his middleweight belt. So
was he always at middleweight? I thought Sam was at light heavyweight.
He was.
Ah,
he
okay.
was. he was even bigger than that too.
Yeah.
So
very
scary man.
Oh, dude, like 84 and he still looks like that, like malnourished and hasn't eaten for a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And last
Slam Sam will be headline in November 26th to keep that
wonderful.
Keep that gold around his waist.
Is that up at Mansfield as well? Is that up in Brisbane here?
Yeah. So we'll look to close the year out at the Mansfield. So fill the joint and take the roof off the Mansfield for him.
As is tradition.
Yep.
And then, mate, last one from me. Goals for the future. XFC 5 years time. What's it look like? What's going to be happening?
Me probably.
Are you still involved,
mate? I'm hoping to have probably a few more grey hairs, and still living the dream, being a bit more confident, a bit more comfortable in front of the camera, and taking this thing from, like I said, from the great platform that I've got it at, even further.
Awesome. That's all from me, Tristan. You got anything to follow up? What do you reckon?
Look, man, I'm just looking forward for Dan to become Dana, the Aussie Dana. That's all.
Daniel White. Daniel White.
Daniel White.
100%. You got to shave the head too, brother.
I look pretty ordinary with a shaved head, so.
All right. That is us for the evening, gentlemen. Once again, I'm Chris Ferguson. That's Tristan Lauder, and we've been talking to Dan Woolard of XFC Australia. Mate, cannot wait for the September 3rd card. XFC 58, headlined by Aaron Tao and Paul Loga once again. Awesome. Thank you very much for your time today, Dan. Really appreciate it, mate.
Thanks very much, boys. It's a pleasure having you.
No dramas. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Catch ya.